What's good, fellow outcasts and other rejects? It's Harder Daddy here, and welcome to WTC, the Anime Outcast. First off, if you're new here, we upload anime what-ifs based around My Hero and other shows alike. Secondly, did you know that 80% of our audience isn't subscribed? So if you want us to continue making good content, make sure to like and subscribe. Now without further ado, let's get into the video. Before we actually get into today's video, there's one thing I'd like to address. Is this a reboot or a remaster? For now, it's just a simple retelling from the original What If main channel, We the Celestials, with a few changes thrown in that will become apparent later. But if you guys want, we'll redo the other parts as well in this sort of style. A poll will be posted in the community tab a couple of minutes after this video goes live where you guys can tell us what you want, or just say so in the comments. Now on to the what if. In this timeline, Izuku is still born quirkless, meaning he still gets tormented by most of his peers for that. He goes through life mainly the same, his dreams of being a hero crushed countless times. Fuck. But we properly pick up with him a week before the canon event, walking home from school on a warm evening. The walk starts off peaceful with Izuku in a world of his own, thinking about the newest heroes to appear on the scene, mostly Kamai Woods. But that peace is quickly interrupted by the sky erupting into a strange firework-like flares. Of course, Izuku stops and gazes into the sky, intrigued by the peculiar light show. So do the other onlookers. Unbeknownst to Izuku, just above all of their heads are two starships locked into battle. Though one is clearly at a disadvantage due to its small size than its more militaristic aggressor. Then, with one charge-up beam attack, the militaristic ship tears through the small one, but as some sort of last-ditch effort, the smaller ship shoots some kind of cargo pod before self-destructing and taking down its attack. City streets shake from the explosion back down on Earth as the sky turns a violent orange. Most people start running away as debris from the warring ships start falling to Earth, smashing into buildings or city street. But Izuku just stands there, paralyzed by fear. Then, some sort of satellite crashes in front of him, creating a large crater and sending him flying back. This disorientates him, with his ears being filled with a painful ringing. As he gets up, he faintly hears some sort of murmuring coming from the satellite. Izuku then inspects the pod, seeing it open up and reveal a strange glowing watch. A strange feeling overcomes Izuku, like he has to reach out for the watch. And that he does, the device suddenly coming alive and jumping onto his wrist. At first, Izuku starts panicking while yelling for the thing to get off. Then, suddenly reality hits him, as he was just standing around in the city while strange objects from space were raining down from the sky. So he runs home, fueled by adrenaline. But once there, he yells for his mother to call the cops, heroes, or anyone. Though Izuku quickly notices a news broadcast Inko was watching, showing that the heroes were already on the scene. With that, he abruptly drops to the floor out of exhaustion and relief. A couple days go by, with Izuku not even touching the watch, afraid it was government technology or possibly even alien in origin. But curiosity, as it does, gets the better of him, causing him to want answers on what the watch actually is. After school, Izuku goes to Takoba Beach, a desolate place where he knows he won't be bothered. He doesn't want his mother or anyone else finding out about whatever has bonded with his wrist. Once there, he immediately takes out his notes and starts sketching the watch, seeing if he could analyze its key features, but not much really comes of this. Next, he tries making hand gestures like doing Detroit Smash, or tries shooting a fireball like Endeavor does. He does this for about an hour or two, trying out different gestures to see if the watch would do anything. But Izuku is quickly defeated, thinking the watch is nothing more than a piece of junk, slamming it against the dumped washing machine in frustration. But then the watch's dial rises with the green hourglass symbol forming into a diamond shape, like it's a screen or something. Inside the diamond is a strange silhouette of some sort of monster. This curiosity piqued, Izuku starts spinning the dial, finding 11 more strange creatures before the list starts looping again. Thinking he broke the watch, Izuku pushes the dial back down and goes to get his school bag, but he's stopped by a strange warmth in his chest, putting his hand there in the process, wrapped in coal. That's when he noticed it. His whole body appeared to be wrapped in coal, while also being on fire.
I'm on fire?
He mutters to himself before screaming out,
I'm on fire!
Izuku starts panicking after that, flailing his arms in the air as he makes a beeline to the murky water. But as he gets close to the shore, he feels a strange sensation creep up his spine, but not in pain. Before he gets into the water, he stops dead in his tracks while noticing he feels fine. That's when a thought hits Izuku. Did he just become Endeavor? Walking back over to the trash pile near his bag, he looks into a shard of glass, seeing his new flaming appearance in its reflection. Though it's a far cry from what he thought he looked like, Izuku starts getting excited. Okay. With this newfound power, Deku starts doing the same testing procedure he did with the watch, imitating pro heroes to see what he could do, and to his amazement, he starts shooting fireballs to the water just like Endeavor would. He messes around with his transformation for a while, even learning to breathe fire like his father. But after a couple of minutes, the watch, which is now on his chest, starts blinking red while playing 3 beeps before the red light engulfs him. As it subsides, Izuku is back in his human form and then rushes back to his bag to take notes on what just happened. From on top of one of the trash mountains, a deflated All Might watches on in confusion.
Ew, sorry to bother you, young man, but should you really be training your quirk here of all places?
All Might announces as he walks over to Izuku, pointing to the large piece of trash he just scorched a few moments ago. Flustered, Izuku quickly apologizes to the stranger before realizing the man mistook his transformation as a quirk. All Might quickly moves past Izuku, seeing him as just some random kid, and starts collecting trash in an attempt to clean the beach on his own. Hey, you must be the beach's caretaker. You should let me help. Deku mutters as he starts fiddling with the watch, attempting to transform once again. But he's stopped by the watch's red glow, assuming it's some sort of timeout or recharging mode. So with no other option, he starts picking up trash normally, shocking All Might, but also pleasing him. After a few minutes of cleaning with the man, Izuku notices the watch's red glow replaced by its usual green once again. He starts fiddling with it again, attempting to transform as All Might continues cleaning. Then a sudden bright flash engulfs Izuku, scaring All Might. As he turns around, he's met with a sizable 4-armed Goliath, which leaves him speechless.
Check it out! I'm just like All Might!
Izuku chuckles as he starts crushing the scorched trash, ignorant that the man he just compared himself to is right in front of him. This gives the number 1 hero an idea, asking the boy for his name, and in turn, introducing himself as Toshinori.
Say, kid, with strength like that, would you mind helping me with the cleanup job?
Toshinori asks, with Deku enthusiastically agreeing, seeing it as a perfect way to test his new powers out. So just like canon, Izuku would start cleaning up the beach with All Might in preparation for the UA entrance exam. But the relationship would be quite different from canon, as All Might doesn't see Izuku as a successor, rather just a good Samaritan helping him out. However, this doesn't stop him from giving Izuku some advice on his transformation whenever he gets a chance. He also throws in an obscure All Might story every now and again as a form of payment for the fanboy. This cleanup takes roughly the same amount of time as it did in canon, with Izuku learning the basics of aliens. There isn't much to cover on this period, except for the moment where Deku would meet All Might in the original canon. He would be walking home from school once again, taking a different way home as his usual way is blocked ever since the meteor shower. Once under a bridge, he stopped halfway through by a strange gurgling sound coming from the drain behind him. As he looks behind, Izuku sees the sludge villain force its way out of the gutter with its crazy eyes locked onto him. The creature begins rambling on about something as it inches towards him, but Izuku doesn't listen as he begins to freeze from a helpless feeling. Nevertheless, he quickly disregards that feeling as he notices his watch's bright glow under the tunnel. So Izuku throws his bag at the monster, buying him a couple seconds to transform. As the green flash covers Izuku, the sludge villain tries to absorb, thinking he managed to get him. The creature lets out a gut-wrenching laugh of victory, but quickly goes quiet as he starts feeling hollow inside. Then a ghost-like entity flows out of the green sludge, followed by a maniacal laugh. The two start staring at each other quietly, both of them attempting to assess the situation. You see, Izuku didn't plan on getting his yet unnamed ghost alien, as it was a random transformation, but he doesn't get the time to think as a familiar laugh echoes through the tunnel, followed by a massive wave of air that splatters the villain against the walls. Then, All Might steps under the tunnel, ready to strike the menacing ghost but he's quickly disarmed by Izuku fanboying over him, weirding him out somewhat because of his appearance. Though after seeing the watch's symbol tucked underneath the ghost's skin, All Might quickly realizes who he's dealing with. Notebook from his bag on the floor and begs All Might to sign it, which he does before briskly moving past Izuku to clean up the villain. He also sees the situation as awkward.
I can't wait to show Mr. Toshinori.
Deku excitedly mutters to himself before the watch times out, turning him back human. All Might quickly retrieves the villain in a bottle and rushes out there as he feels his own time limit creeping to its max. On a quick side note, Izuku hasn't thought of naming his aliens yet, as he sees them more of an extension of himself more than their own entities. But we'll still be referring to them by name for simplicity's sake until he does. With that out of the way, we can move to the day of the UA entrance exam. It starts with Izuku waiting on the beach he and Mr. Toshinori had just cleaned, wanting to thank him for his help before the exam. As the time before the exam grows shorter and shorter, Izuku is forced to get a move on to the exam center without getting to thank his friend. Once at the exam center, he is met by a Bakugo walking behind him, who smacks him on the back of the head while laughing. "Do you really think a small fry like yourself can get in?" He laughs out while passing Deku, glancing back at him with a cocksure grin. For a second, Izuku contemplates transforming in front of Bakugo, holding up the watch to him. "What are you gonna do? Call in a hero with that thing?" Bakugo jokes while continuing on his way, leaving Deku just standing there. He watches his old friend enter the exam hall, wondering where it all went wrong. Suddenly ripped from his daydream by a girl asking if he was okay, as he's just standing there awkwardly. Izuku hastily apologizes for blocking the way before rushing into the center, making their encounter rather quick. There isn't much to cover for the written exam, except Izuku would have a little more time preparing for that. Going on to the practical exam, Izuku goes in a lot more confident than in canon. Instead of making a fool of himself in front of Ida, he sprints headfirst into the city arena while dialing up a hero on the watch. When the exam starts, Izuku jumps into the air and transforms, landing as his crystal-based alien Diamond Head. As he lands, he slams his fist into the ground, creating a wave of diamonds that tears through some of the robots that come flooding in. As Diamond Head, Izuku starts racking up points thanks to his form's versatility. He either shreds robots with sharp crystal projectiles, or cuts through with bladed arms. Everything goes downhill, however, when he sees the humongous zero-pointer robot, making him freeze. At first, he tries to run away like the others, but stops as he hears faint cries coming from behind him. As Izuku turns behind him, he's met by a grueling sight of the zero-pointer about to step on the girl he met at the start of the day, appearing to be trapped under the rubble. Without hesitation, he sends over a wave of cascading diamonds to stop the robot as he runs over to help her out of the rubble. As soon as Izuku gets the rubble off of Uraraka, he hears the dreaded beeping of the watch that leads to a timeout. "Why? Why now?" Izuku roars at the watch before running away with Uraraka as the diamond begins to shatter under the zero-pointer's weight. As the two start running, Izuku trips over some debris, causing him to hit the pavement under him. This puts him at the mercy of the robot, who's about to step. He instinctively puts his hands over himself to block the machine, knowing full well it wouldn't do anything. When the machine's metal collides with the Omnitrix, it begins to make a charging sound. Then it creates some sort of energy feedback, sending the robot back and almost toppling it. This catches Izuku off guard. He didn't even know the watch could do such a thing. Furthermore, the Omnitrix appears to be recharged already, using him even more. Though he doesn't question it as he transforms to his go-to alien, Heat Blast. Once changed, Izuku rockets in the air, getting to the zero-pointer's head and yelling, "Prominence burn!" flames to Using the full might of his flames to emit a concentrated beam of heat from his body, he vaporizes the head of the beast in a couple of seconds. Everyone watches in awe from down below, feeling some of the heat wash over them. Once Izuku is done rendering the machine's head to ashes, he slowly floats down while watching it drop to its knees before completely falling over, being nothing more than a husk at this point. Izuku then goes to inspect his handiwork, hearing faint whispers behind him from people asking what his quirk was, as he was just a Diamond Man mere minutes ago. That the zero-pointer robot's burnt husk as if he was inspecting his handiwork. The other exam participants gaze back at him in shock, confused about how he went from a crystal behemoth to a burning charcoal creature, though none of them get an answer as the exam comes to a close, with Izuku just shuffling off, waiting for his transformation to time out. We move forward a couple of days after that to where Izuku receives his acceptance letter. Just like in canon, it came packaged in a pristine white envelope with the UA logo embossed into a wax seal. Izuku tears into the letter, finding a holodisc being greeted by his hero, All Might, surprising him. But the fact that he passed with flying colors doesn't even faze him, getting 40 villain points and 60 rescue points. As the video continues, Izuku learns of All Might's new career as a teacher with the situation's weight hitting him. He jumps up from his seat and starts pacing back and forth, unable to comprehend the fact that he will be attending UA.
Young Midoriya, before I go, I have 2 crucial messages for you.
The Hollow All Might announces, stopping Deku in his tracks and bring his attention back to the video.
That support item of yours, I'm unsure of its importance, but just in case, you better get that registered as essential immediately.
He continues perplexing Izuku. This gets him thinking on how All Might found out about the watch. But nonetheless, the hologram resumes.
I've received a letter from one, Mr. Toshinori, thanking you for the help on the beach and wishing you the best in your first semester here at UA.
And with that, the holodisc promptly turns off, leaving Izuku to wonder if Mr. Toshinori told All Might about the watch, ignorant of the link between the two. Briskly moving to his first day, we pick up with Izuku staring at his classroom's large door. He stands there for a few seconds silently, a strange feeling in his stomach. Something felt wrong to him, like he's out of place there. Though he peers down at the Omnitrix on his wrist, seeing his reflection in the screen, that fills him with courage. So with a deep breath, he proudly enters the new classroom, unprepared for the sight within. As soon as he enters, he's met by the sight of Bakugo and Ida yelling at each other.
What, did your old school shove that stick up your ass, or were you born with it?
Bakugo yells at the speedster, appalling him, though the two quickly stop bickering as they notice Izuku, seeing him wide-eyed and speechless.
How the hell did you get in here?
Bakugo roars, his eyes lighting up angrily like explosions. He tries to confront Deku, but is blocked by Ida as he enthusiastically charges up and bows instead.
My deepest apologies,
he announces regretfully as he slowly lifts his head and formally introduces himself.
Wait. What are you sorry for?
A confused Izuku mutters, disoriented by how fast this encounter was progressing. Ida basically explained how he only saw him as a lowlife who was only out for himself during the entrance exam, referring to how he acted as his still unnamed diamond hero. And apparently, his aim with his projectile diamonds was very sloppy. But after seeing his actions as his Endeavor-like transformation, he knew he had horribly misjudged him. Izuku just stares back speechless, barely remembering if they even interacted during the exam. But the one person he could never forget appears behind him, Uraraka. Their chat goes pretty much like canon, but as it progresses, Izuku notices a strange mumbling coming from behind his new friend. As he peers over her shoulder, he jumps back in fear as he sees a disgruntled man in a sleeping bag. The two awkwardly stare at each other in silence as Uraraka freezes in fear.
Hello, I'm Shota Aizawa, your homeroom teacher.
The man lazily explains as he leaves his sleeping bag, dusting himself off as he gets up. Aizawa quickly pushes past Izuku and Uraraka, moving to the front of the classroom to explain their first assignment as a UA student, the Quirk Apprehension Test. With that, the students don their UA PE uniforms and meet their strange homeroom teacher outside. As they all gather around Aizawa, he starts a speech very similar to canon.
For most of your lives, you've taken tests without the use of your quirks. A very stupid system, if you ask me. Why should the weak hinder the strong? Anyway, I'd like Midoriya to step up to the plate for a demonstration of what is possible with your quirks.
As Izuku marches up to the plate, he starts dialing up the transformation, his mind brimming with countless ideas, though he keeps it simple by going to transform into his powerhouse hero, the one we know as Four Arms. As he slams down the dial and is engulfed by a green flash, most of the class watch on in awe as the red Goliath replaces Izuku. On the other hand, Bakugo watches on horrified. What the hell?
Look, Midoriya, I'm gonna say this in the bluntest way possible. Could you explain your quirk in a way that won't put the class to sleep?
Aizawa mutters, sounding a tiny bit frustrated by the long-winded explanation on his submission forms. So Izuku explains his cover story to hide the Omnitrix, saying he was born with a rare mutation-type quirk called DNA metamorphosis. To put it simply, inside of Izuku is a genetic material of DNA for numerous foreign and strange creatures. Naturally, this would be considered a worthless quirk due to the fact that there is no practical application for it. However, thanks to an experimental support item from Detnerat, Izuku can safely swap his DNA with one of 12 creatures inside of him, but he can only stay in a different form for about 10 minutes due to the limitations of the device and potential side effects. But with that out of the way, Aizawa tosses a softball to Izuku.
Anything goes, just stay within the circle.
He mutters after getting out his phone. Midoriya stares at the ball for a couple of seconds while thinking, his class waiting in deafening anticipation. Then, Izuku gets into position to throw the ball with his lower right arm. Once it leaves his grip, he uses his upper arms to make a thunderous clap. This sends a wave of concussive force at the ball, shooting it even further with the ball landing out of the way of view of the students. Aizawa, with his phone's aid, declares Izuku's score at a respectable 812 meters.
As expected from the one who scored the highest in the entrance exam. And what I'll be expecting from the rest of you.
Aizawa announces to the class nonchalantly as if it wasn't a big deal for most of them. Though Aizawa had been rather lax so far, he is quickly angered by Bakugo leaping into the air and rushing at Izuku by way of explosions. As the boy flies through the air to attack his peer, he suddenly notices a significant altitude loss as his palms refuse to ignite. Bakugo is promptly restrained and then slammed into the ground by his teacher and his scarf, his hair starting to float in the process. Bakugo tries to force his way out of the capture weapon but struggles without his quirk. But with that display, it becomes apparent to the class who their teacher really was, Eraserhead, the Erasure Hero. Bakugo is forced to stop his attack on Deku and get back in line after being threatened with expulsion by Aizawa. With that out of the way, Aizawa continues the quirk apprehension test like normal, with the same punishment for anyone who fails it. Izuku gets through a small handful of events before timing out, but still doing exceedingly well in the ones he got to be an alien in. But he's pestered continuously by Bakugo as he goes on, demanding to know how he did that. Each and every time he tries this, he's met by Izuku shrugging him off or just blatantly ignoring him. Moving on to the results, Izuku rightfully earns the 10th spot on the results board, a far cry from his canon placement. He probably could have moved up a place or two if he'd used his time more effectively, as he wasted a good chunk of it waiting for his turn or thinking of a strategy. Mineta, just like most what-ifs here, is expelled soon after the results are revealed. With that, Izuku's first day at UA comes to an end. While on his way home, he's accompanied by both Uraraka and Ida, the former commenting on his strange time limit during the exam. Though Uraraka has a different conversation in mind. Those heroes you have are so cool. Do you name them? She curiously asked, genuinely wanting to learn about them. This is met with silence from Izuku, who had never really thought about that. No, not really. They're pets. They're me. He mutters back, which gets him thinking he probably should get some names together for convenience sake when talking about them. There's not much else to cover here, so we'll be moving on to the next event. It starts off mostly the same as in canon, with Izuku getting accustomed to his new student life at UA. Our first change comes when All Might comes bursting into the 1A classroom and announces that it was time for fight training. Instead of his concerned look Izuku had in the canon series, this Izuku has to look with pure determination and excitement, ready to show off more of his transformations. With the hero versus villain training about to begin, we have to quickly go over Izuku's hero costume. He'll be wearing the same homemade suit as his canon counterpart, except with two small changes. One of the sleeves would be cut off short to give him access to the Omnitrix, and he would also be equipped with multiple small support items, stuff like flashbangs and other things to help him stall when he inevitably times out during a fight. We're going to skim over the next following parts as nothing too different happens here. All teams for the Hero vs. Villains training are the same, the central teams being Deku and Uraraka against Bakugo and Ida. We pick up with Bakugo and Ida as they enter the bomb room.
Hey, Four Eyes! What's the deal with that weakling Deku? How is he transforming like that?
Bakugo sparks at his teammate, determined to know about Izuku's secret, but Ida only stares back, rather puzzled by that remark. Strange, I thought that his childhood friend would already know about his quirk. But if you're going to be persistent about it, I believe he can transform into 12 different creatures for an increment of 10 minutes at a time, thanks to that watch of his. That time limit is the major weakness if you ask me, Ida explained as he investigates the room and setting Bakugo off. Moving to Izuku, he sits outside of the building with his more friendly partner, Uraraka. The two discuss a plan for a bit, with Deku making a priority target. As the two enter the mock building, Izuku starts dialing up another hero, thinking a few steps ahead of his hunter. Within minutes of skulking through the corridor of building, the pair get jumped by Bakugo. He leaps out from behind a corner and goes to blast the opposing team with a blinding explosion. But he's almost blinded by an even brighter green light engulfing Izuku and Uraraka. As the flash subsides, he sees Deku as his plant-based alien, Wildvine, shielding Uraraka.
What the hell are you?
Bakugo roars as he gears up from another attack, somewhat disgusted by Izuku's new form. We pick up with Deku freshly transformed into his unnamed nature hero, the one we know as Wildvine. He stares down Bakugo as he could feel the rage seething off of him.
Listen here, freak show! I'll give you one chance to explain yourself before I turn you into ash!
Bakugo roars from down the corridor, his desire for answers driving him to his most natural weapon, violence. But he doesn't get a response from the Omnitrix wielder, as he just whispers something to his partner, Uraraka. Then, the crazed bomber lunges into the air and blasts himself at his opponent. Once close, he goes for a flurry of explosions, which Deku surprisingly takes point blank, but spins backwards first. This causes a chain reaction with his unused seeds on his back, creating an even bigger explosion, sending both boys back. As Bakugo recovers, he notices the corridor is masked in a cloud of thick black smoke. From the mist shoots out green tendrils in which he promptly dodges while yelling out,
"Is that all you got?"
But once again, he is met with no answer. When the smoke begins to settle, Bakugo quickly notices a distinct lack of people in the ruined hallway. It appears that Uraraka had run away, and a hole was in place of Deku. Panicked, Bakugo frantically yells for his opponent to show himself while looking around. Then, almost on cue, Izuku busts through the ground while yelling,
"Inaccured chain prison!"
he proudly announces as he starts tangling his rival in his tendrils and vines, but his bindings are no match for Bakugo's violent explosions as he breaks free from his restraints and jumps back. Then, he aims his loaded gauntlet at a plant monster and laughs.
"What's the matter? Afraid to come up with your own moves or something?"
With a sly remark out of the way, he primes his support item and gets ready to decimate Deku before a voice bellows in his ear.
"That's enough, Bakugo! You have already been disqualified from the match!" All Might announces from an earpiece, freezing Bakugo in place. Teacher explains how during Izuku's last move, he had snuck a capture tape around his leg without him noticing, which he got off Uraraka before she ran off. With that, Bakugo lowers his weapon, with his jaw falling open as well. He just stares at Izuku blankly as he fully emerges from the ground, mortified by his amateur mistake. But Izuku doesn't dwell on him for long as he scurries off to enact the second part of his plan. As Bakugo starts walking out of the building, he drags his feet with his head down, low from defeat. Once outside, he rips the tape off his leg, only to find a message crudely scrawled onto it. It vaguely reads as, "I'll explain everything. Meet me at the gates. Bring train fare." We're gonna mostly skip over the next part, as it's just mainly Izuku sneaking up on Ida to quickly snatch up the bomb, winning the exercise. We pick up again with Izuku meeting Bakugo outside the large UA gates. From there, he leads him to Takuba Municipal Beach Park. As they arrive, Bakugo demands answers as he had done what Deku had asked. But yet again, he receives no response as Izuku begins looking for something, eventually finding an abandoned truck parked at the end of the beach. The main exterior of it was rusted, with the tires being slashed.
"Look, nerd! I didn't come all this way just to watch you rummage through crap!
Bakugo yells, frustrated by the two's lack of communication as Izuku starts searching through the truck's cab. After a few minutes of searching, Izuku pulls out a strange spherical pod and starts talking.
You, remember that time the meteors rained down from the sky? I think the locals called it Zero Day or something along those lines.
He explains before throwing the rusted pod to Bakugo's feet.
Well, let's just say that thing was among the meteors. It crashed right in front of me. It almost killed me.
He explains further while toying his watch. This doesn't satisfy Bakugo as he demands to know how this is linked to him getting a quirk.
That's the thing, Kachan. I'm still quirkless.
Izuku mutters back before popping the dial on his watch and promptly slamming it down. The watch's flash almost blinds Bakugo as he recovers his face, seeing Izuku as his Technopath hero upgrade once it subsides.
Don't you get it? I got the watch from the pod. I have no clue what it is, but it lets me change into like 12 different creatures.
Izuku finally explains as he merges with the truck, seemingly repairing it. This doesn't make any sense to Bakugo, seeing it as a poor excuse to hide something else. But as he continues to think, it starts making sense to him in aspects. As they continue to discuss what Izuku's power is, with Bakugo pelting him with a myriad of questions, a strange drone watches on. It keeps its distance from the boys, but hones in on the conversation. But with that, we're skipping ahead a couple of days. There's not much need to cover class representative vote, which goes exactly like in canon. Instead, we go straight into the bus ride to the USJ facility. In this version of the ride, however, Izuku sits right next to Bakugo as he flips through his hero's notes, reading up on his alien forms.
Lame. Boring. Stupid. How many damn arms do you need?
Bakugo mutters to himself as he flips through it. After their talk on the beach, the pair's relationship had taken a friendlier turn, though they still wouldn't call each other friends. There was just an unspoken trust between the pair. As he continues to go throughout the notebook, he notices a page aptly named Hero Names. As you can probably guess, Uraraka had finally convinced him into naming his forms, which are going to be told here as they are very different from their normal ones. So in quick-fire naming session, here they are. Heat Blast goes Sakurajima, which is the Japanese word volcano. Wild Vine becomes Kudzu, which roughly translates to Vine God. Accelerate becomes Alpha X, referring to a form of bullet train in Japan. Forearms becomes Extra Might, which is an apparent reference to All Might. Ghost Freak becomes Hibiki, a word that means resonant soul in Japanese. Upgrade becomes Overdrive, which probably doesn't need a lot of explanation. Wild Mutt becomes Tero Inu, which basically means feared hound. Gray Matter becomes Cortex, as in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Ripjaws is given the name Sakasaru, which means rip and tear in Japanese. Stinkfly becomes Slime Sect, which Izuku just sees as a basic but fitting name. Cannonbolt becomes Wrecking Bolt, which is just a cool sounding name to him. And Diamond Head becomes Keisai Sei, which translates to Blade's Edge. Going back to the bus ride, everyone was in high spirits as they discussed the ones among them that had the most potential. Most people seem to gravitate to either Deku or Bakugo for obvious reasons, but as the conversation progresses, a very valid question is asked by Asui.
I gotta ask, why did Detnerit give such an advanced item to some random kid like yourself?
She croaks, breaking through Izuku's lie with the force of All Might. He didn't know if Asui generally saw through his lie or was actually just interested.
Doesn't your dad work for them or something? I remember you would never shut the hell up about it when we were kids.
Bakugo grunts, covering for Deku as he freezes. This cover-up is enough to satisfy Asui, but gives Izuku his own question. Why would Bakugo cover for him? Like how he kept the secret of All for One in canon, he does it for the same reason. He knew that if the watch's secret was ever to get out, it would make Izuku a target and literally everyone else he knows by extension. The conversation continues for a bit more before getting cut short by Ozawa saying that they had arrived. As the students leave the bus, they are greeted by an ecstatic 13 and the massive USJ facility. The students are quickly rushed into the building with the rescue hero going on her typical speech. But as they walk further in the dome, Deku starts noticing something strange about the Omnitrix. The dial was popped up and spinning on its own with a half-formed diamond shape on its screen. It was also making a painfully loud revving sound, drawing everyone's attention to him. But eyes are quickly turned to the central plaza as a black void forms. From it, hordes of villains pour out like a gushing lake, with the supposed boss villain coming out last. At first, the students think that they are a part of the exercise, but get yelled at by their teacher to stay back. The situation starts to dawn on them. Aizawa leaps in to fend off the villains without hesitation, commanding his colleague to get the students out of there. As he fights through the horde, the sentient mist villain manages to slip his way past the hero and up to the entrance to introduce himself. When the students get close to the said exit, he materializes in front of them and politely announces, "Please excuse our rather brash entrance, but I do believe one of you kids has property belonging to the League of Villains." The mist creature's wisp-like eyes then lock onto Izuku, who is trying to desperately get the watch out of its crazed state. "Ah, yes, there you are. Now, if you'd be so kind, I'll be taking the Omnitrix off your hands," he boldly exclaims as he forms a foggy tendril to grab Izuku with. Before he gets a chance to strike, Kirishima and Bakugo both lunge at the villain. However, their combined attack is wasted at effort as they fail to hit the man's actual body. The villain now, angered, he scatters the students in a fit of rage, messing up his plan. Deku is transported to the shipwreck zone, just like in canon. Being forced to dive into the water, he tries desperately to slam down the Omnitrix's dial, only to notice it was already down. So confused, Deku doesn't get a chance to contemplate as he's rushed by an amphibian villain. His first thought is to dial up Sake Sakuru, but realizes he doesn't have much time to change. As he braces himself for the fish villain's attack, panic thoughts ensue, only to be barely saved by Asui, who brings him aboard the boat set in the middle. With a second to breathe, Izuku collapses on the ship's deck, muttering to himself about how problematic the watch is, but Asui quickly forces him to his feet, berating him as he was not focusing on the dire situation. So Izuku goes straight into his analysis mode and starts discussing stuff with Asui. Their first topic was the League's end goal. They reach a conclusion and it has to be something greater than just to steal a support item. Throughout this part, Asui would keep asking Izuku what he thought the item was, with him playing dumb. He obviously knows the group is after the watch, but wasn't totally sure due to what the Mist villain had called it, the Omnitrix. Up until this point, Izuku hadn't actually learned the name of the Omnitrix, but to the actual topic, they struggled to reach a coherent answer. Next, to talk about how prepared their antagonists are. Certainly know a fair bit about the UA schedule and facility, but yet they put the most aquatically adept in the shipwreck zone. This clearly means they weren't clear on the students' quirks, giving Izuku an idea for later. The last topic is their escape plan, creating another conflict. Deku had grown somewhat cocky after cleaning the beach, taking after Bakugo and inheriting his battle-hungry mentality. He wants to jump in head first and take them out. Asui, on the other hand, wants to find a way to flee, but still knowing that would be equally as difficult. So Izuku devises a compromise. After a few seconds of explaining the plan, Deku dashes off the boat while screaming obscenities at the surrounding villains in an attempt to act like Bakugo. He wants all eyes on him to put off the stunt. Once in the air, he dials up the hero and transforms, becoming Wrecking Bolt. In his ball form, he starts revving up furiously in the air before Tatsui jumps into the air herself and smacks him at the villains with her tongue. This doesn't have the same effect as their cannon attack, but it gives Asui enough leeway to escape. She slowly makes her way to the central plaza, using the sounds of war to lead her there. The sound sources are coming from Aizawa as he takes on a horde of villains on his lonesome. Shigaraki watches the fight observantly while fidgeting with some device. The item looked kit-bashed, clearly constructed from scrape and other junk parts. When Asui makes it to the plaza, she watches in awe at her teacher before Deku emerges from the water beside her, gasping for air. So the fact that he was human again so quickly confuses her. Explaining when he was fighting his own battle against the water villain horde, the watch suddenly timed out without explanation, forcing him to make a break for it. As Deku observes Aizawa in his fight, he sees it as an uphill struggle that will be getting too steep for him.
I think we need to lighten Mr. Aizawa's load, if you get what I mean. I doubt he's going to last very long out there.
Izuku mutters to Sue, the brief taste of victory clouding his judgment.
Are you crazy? We barely got out of the water zone. Doesn't your watch need time to recharge?
Asui comments back, bringing up a more valid concern. But Izuku just shows her the vivid green glow of the Omnitrix, seeming to have quick recharge and timeout. While with Shigaraki, he calls forward Kurogiri to complain to him in his childlike manner.
This device is useless! Did Master really think our human crap would turn off such a weapon?
He vents, starting to violently scratch his neck in frustration. His missed friend tries desperately to calm him down and advises him to turn his aggression towards the enemy. But then, as he goes to lash out at his subordinate, he sees Izuku flash the green glow of the Omnitrix. Immediately, his eyes lock on to the watch. We pick up a bit after their escape as they watch their teacher fight off a horde of C-list villains. Deku stares intently into the chaotic crowd, trying to pick an entry point or a way to pick off a few. He's so concentrated on finding a way to help Aizawa, he doesn't notice Shigaraki rushing him. It's not until Sue shouts for him to move, as she herself does. He sees the 5'9" man-child hobbling at him. Shigaraki gets inches from grabbing Deku with both hands before he falls backwards into the water. A green flash emerges from the pool, which Shigaraki foolishly reaches into. But before he could grasp Deku, a black head with 4 eyes jumps out of the water, pelting him with the slime. With that, Deku fully emerges from the water as insect hero Slimesect. Though he fended off Shigaraki with him, the form is a terrible choice for the circumstance. His wings were already soaking wet, stopping him from flying, and he's nowhere strong enough to help Aizawa in his fight.
You have no idea how to use that thing, do you? You're like a toddler trying to drive a sports car.
Shigaraki mutters while reclaiming the hand that was knocked from his face. All while he is talking, Deku sees his crusty face and his sunken eyes, somewhat unnerving him. But he stands his ground, going to blast him again with slime, but isn't fast enough to act first. Shigaraki quickly pulls out a small remote-like device and points it at the watch's symbol on Deku's face. At first, he thinks this is game over, thinking that it must be the device making his watch go haywire. But yet again, nothing seems to happen. No timeout, beeping, or anything of the sorts, allowing Deku to blast slime at Shigaraki once again. This knocks a strange device off his crusty mitts, with Sue keenly snatching it with her tongue. Then, the two make a break for it since Shigaraki was momentarily down, but they don't make it far before an oversized bird creature appears in front of them, blocking their path. Izuku just stares at him in terrified awe, thinking he resembles a demented All Might. Asui, on the other hand, croaks quietly while frozen.
Now would be a good time for that four-armed guy of yours.
The Nomu then reaches out for Deku, grabbing him by the neck to rip the Omnitrix's badge from his face. He tries to go against the beast, utilizing his projectile vomit to push against his hand and using his bladed tail to slash at his wrist. But none of this works against the crazed villain as he begins tugging on the watch, causing Izuku to scream in pain. His agony is then cut short as a loud boom echoes across the entire USJ, something blitzing past Deku and Asui. Within a blink of an eye, they are then moved to safety. It takes Izuku a couple of seconds to register what just happened, seeing All Might in front of him with steam jetting off of him. For a second, everything went quiet, giving the two students a second to breathe. But panic ensues as the Nomu's hand limply falls off Izuku's face, causing him to yell at All Might, asking him what had just happened.
It's simple, young Midoriya. Sometimes lethal force is required to disarm your villain. Take notes on that.
All Might explains, angered by the sight of his students in a near-death experience. But as All Might looks back at the villain, he sees the Nomu's hand was mysteriously back, oddly easing him before realizing what that meant. Super regeneration. With the villains pushing forward, All Might orders his students to get Aizawa away and rejoin their class. At first, Deku has no idea what he means, but he quickly sees a bloodied and broken Aizawa lying beside him. Grabbing Sue and his teacher, Izuku quickly flaps his now dried wings and sets off, leaving All Might to do his thing. As their class is in sight at the top of the stairs, Izuku hears 3 dreaded beeps.
Shit! This is going to be a rough landing!
he yells before the three are engulfed in a red timeout flash. They then barely make it to the platform with their class. Izuku skids across the ground with Aizawa being braced by Sue. At first, both students are happy to be reunited with the rest of the class, ignorant to the horrors they've witnessed. Without hesitation, Deku stands up and starts cheering for All Might as he brawls with the Nomu. However, to his surprise, he's the only one cheering. As he looks behind him, he sees a fraction of his actual class, with most of them gathered around 13's hollow husk and some going to Aizawa. Then, as Izuku focuses on counting what's left of his class, Asui walks up and passes him the device she took before going to the rest of the class. It's promptly crushed by him, not seeing it as vital evidence for later. With his mood soured, Deku turns back to watch his hero take down the villains. Just like in Canid, he's terrified by the sight of All Might stuck in sort of a trap. A feeling of despair tightens Izuku's chest as he sees All Might's once white shirt turn to grueling crimson. Emotion overcomes him, causing his body to move without a thought or even a plan. As he sprints down the large staircase, screaming the symbol's name, he hears the Omnitrix recharge ping, telling him what time it is. Izuku then leaps into the air, popping the watch dial and immensely slamming it down. He rockets towards All Might like a shooting star in his fiery Sakurajima form. Kurogiri tries to catch the blazing Pyro Knight by summoning a portal in his path, but like Bakugo would, Izuku blasts himself over it and manages to get to the Nomu's exposed legs. He uses his hands to hover in place and then uses his mouth to spray napalm like fire all over its legs, just like his father could have. This weakens the Nomu's grip just enough for All Might to free himself.
Even with that watch, you still have terrible timing. This isn't a place for a student.
All Might coughs while grasping his side, but Izuku retorts by yelling,
And this isn't a place for a hero to die.
This halts the conversation, All Might not having a response, though he wouldn't need to address the remark as Bakugo comes blasting in, pinning down Kurogiri. Kirishima jumps in as well and attempts to strike Shigaraki, only to miss. Just like what he said with Izuku, All Might berates the other two students for jumping in like that, but their attention is moved to the shrieking Nomu as it collapses out of the portal. Its burnt and withered legs couldn't support it at all, making the Titan fall.
Didn't think you'd have the balls to roast something like that, Deku.
Bakugo jokes, which Izuku doesn't take kindly to, as he starts to ignite in anticipation. He's expecting the Nomu to regrow its lost limb like it had before, but he's shocked to see it couldn't. The burn marks persistent on his legs, giving Izuku two theories as to why. Either the cauterized wound was at fault, or could it regrow burnt out cells. It doesn't matter why it couldn't regenerate anymore, only the fact that it couldn't. Izuku tries to explain his theory before the frenzied Nomu gallops at Bakugo, trying to free Kurogiri. Like a deer in the headlights, Bakugo just stares frozen. The thing is still too fast to react to. As the creature strikes, everyone else is blown back from the attack, even blowing out Izuku's flame for a second. When he recovers from the blowback, he's confused to see Bakugo sitting right beside him, now wide-eyed. The two briefly double-take at each other, not sure what just happened. Izuku questions how he managed to dodge such a fast attack. Bakugo mutters back that he didn't. With that revelation, it's apparent to everyone that All Might had saved him at the last second, taking the blow himself. From here, we're going to pick up the pace a little, as not much differs from canon. All Might commands the students to retreat before going into the clash with the Nomu again, though it's a much easier battle for him as the creature was lacking legs. The fight sends shockwaves throughout the USJ, sending both Deku and Bakugo flying off. As the fight goes past its climax, with the Nomu being shot into space, Shigaraki finds his way to a disoriented Deku. He gets inches from touching him before gunshots ring out, riddling his lower half with bullets. That marks the entrance of the UA teachers and the cue for the League of Villains to leave. So that brings us to the end of the USJ arc, with the students being rounded up and brought back to the UA main campus. Not much happens after this, even after the students are given the rest of the week to relax. Izuku just ponders about the villain's interest in the watch and makes sure it's back the way it worked, but doesn't do anything noticeable. When the students return to school, spirits are mixed. Some are proud of their actions at the USJ, while others felt like the only reason they survived was thanks to the teachers. Deku and Bakugo, on the other hand, were chattering about the thrill of finally getting to fight real villains, but the conversation is cut short by a heavily casted Aizawa waltzing in casually. This leads to the regular talk about the sports festival, which we don't need to go into. What we do need to go over is when Izuku is going to lunch. He'd be walking to the cafeteria with Uraraka and Ida when he's approached by All Might. At first he's startled by his sudden appearance, but is quickly calmed by him asking if he wants to join him for lunch. With the encouragement of his two friends, Izuku takes up the symbol of peace on his offer. Once at his office, All Might ushers Izuku in first.
Young Midoriya, I think it's time we both came clean to each other.
He mutters as Deku takes a seat. Then, as All Might takes a seat himself, he's engulfed by a puff of smoke. As it subsides, Izuku is left with his jaw open as All Might is replaced by his smaller form.
Yeah, I know. You're probably confused as to why Mr. Toshinori just replaced All Might.
He mutters in a less bombastic voice, pouring the both of them a cup of tea. With that, he explains his injury that left him with his deflated form, making sure to leave out One for All as well. Izuku struggles to take in that information, none of it making sense to him.
Wait, so you're the same Mr. Toshinori that watched me clean the beach and the same All Might I met under the bridge?
He asks, getting a light chuckle from the number one hero before answering a simple yes.
With my secret out, it's your turn.
All Might mutters, his sunken eyes locking onto the Omnitrix. For what felt like the 100th time, Izuku explains how he obtained the device. His secret was starting to feel not so secret now.
Figures. A friend of mine got one of the smaller villains to spill their guts. Apparently they were after some weapon, and that watch of yours is the only candidate.
All Might further explains, then sliding a strange badge over to Izuku.
He basically says that his friend wants him to give that badge to Izuku in case anyone else comes looking for the watch.
Thanks to the Outcasts and Rejects for watching till the end of the video. If this video gets 80 likes in 2 weeks, we'll continue this series. Other than that, if you have any questions about the series or channel, sound off in the comments or feel free to join our Discord. Also, if you want to hear any voices from me, I do several, then feel free to hit me up in my Discord, in the link in the description below. Thanks.